For those who haven't joined us previously, essentially London Tech Leaders is a growing platform for heads of transformation leaders, CXO kind of level, board level discussions. And it's an opportunity to discuss the latest industry trends in the market, challenge conventional thinking. But when we go back to kind of in-person events, it's a real opportunity to network with your peers, where you might not get to do so on a day-to-day basis.
Phil, so recent shifts in customer engagement. Is this something that we should be looking to do? You know, COVID's changed the way that customers engage. You know, in your industry in particular, there's quite a lot of change there. Should we look at changing our existing business models? Do we need to, or is it all just, it's a glitch, it'll be over soon, just stick with a plan, you know, no need to adapt? What should we do there?
Oh, look, I'm not a medical expert, right? But I do not have Trump's confidence in the arrival of a vaccine in the next couple of weeks, as was announced last night. This appears to be going to be around for a while. And from what I understand in terms of the pipeline of SARS and MERS, these coronaviruses that hop, the frequency potentially, this is a thing that's around for a while to come. That aside, we've had some of these tools for a very long time. We've just never used them. And I think we're just now figuring out how to work in a new world. For me, customer engagement is absolutely key. Nobody knows what it's going to look like next year, because the things that we might have thought about from us, fingerprint recognition for access, well, that's probably blown out of the water in a zero touch pandemic world. So rethinking some of the plans that we had and adapting to whatever local lockdown, national lockdown, new rules, new regs, new consumer behavior, I think is going to be incumbent on our technology estates, and it's going to be dependent upon industries. That contactless ordering was already coming through in a lot of market high street places. The Deliveroos, Uber Eats, click and collects were already in place. Now the acceleration of those across any brand is far more significant. I think if you're in an industry where step one is register the consumer, step two is send them lots of paper to sign, that process fundamentally has to shift pretty quickly, or the regulations have to shift to allow the industry to survive in a remote working future way of consumer engagement. And that's just about us as IT leaders, technology leaders, business leaders adapting. And it is going to be that adapt, change pipeline of the future, I think.
So your point is almost, it doesn't matter whether COVID's a blip or not. Our BAU is that we've got to adapt and change, because if it's not COVID, it'll be something else, and we just got to keep reiterating and iterating around, right?
The longer we're here, the more habits people are going to have that are going to be sticky habits, right? My children don't talk about going to class anymore. They talk about going to pods and bubbles. Just that as a fundamental change. How many people have forgotten a mask as they walked to the shop and gone back to their car? We have to change. We have to adapt. I think that's just the way of the future for me.
Okay, Des, you're in a very old industry, right? One of the older ones. A lot of tradition there. Does this apply to you? Do you guys just stick to your guns and carry on as you always have done, or are you with Phil? Is change got to be at the core of your day to day?
I think what we're all going to learn from this year is there's no going back from a number of things that have been forced upon us, and many of them I think have just fast tracked things that were happening. So if you look at trends of look at the high street as an example of trends of. Many of us have seen many of the sort of old retailers have struggled to adapt, and I think that's, if you look at since lockdown, the number of restaurant chains that have also now failed because they're all highly leveraged, and anywhere that looks at high volume, low margin, high volume, high street business is struggling. It's going to struggle because it hasn't got the throughput that it needed. So I think many of the changes that we've seen are going to stay with us. The over 50s moving online for shopping is another big one. So you're going to, that was a group that if you went to the high street or if you went to a supermarket, that demographic was your core audience that was not going online or was slower to get online. They've been forced online, and that's not going to change. So anybody who's not looking and saying next year is completely different to the last year, I don't think any business is looking to say, well, just carry on and do what we're doing. For us, we were already starting a digital transformation to try and move effectively a paper-based old style market to a digital market. And what we've seen is actually this has been an accelerator for us because we've been forced to move to things like electronic placement and more work being done. And I don't want to use too much industry talk, but pre-bind, which is effectively before you moment your risk has been underwritten effectively and contractually underwritten. A lot of that has had to move online, and they were areas where you had a lot of entrenched views about. No, I go to and meet my underwriter. I go and see them, and I know I get a good deal from the look in their eyes. Very similar to I worked in investment banking through periods when we transformed those markets, and you'd always get a trader say, I have to look in the eye to see I've got a good deal, right? And I think that sort of thing is moving away. For us, it was very much an accelerator. We've seen an increase in electronic placement. We opened up a virtual room for, if anybody sort of understands the Lloyd's building, the first floor, four floors are actually what we call underwriting rooms. They're sort of trading rooms where brokers come to underwrite their risk. But about 40,000 people can come into those rooms and do that business. We've virtualized that so that they've got directory that they can, we're trying to find, why do you come to the room? You've got electronic placement. Why do you come to the room? And how do we start to replicate that in a virtual world? That won't go away either. There'll be parts of our business that will actually find that much easier. If I'm a broker coming in and I can access, a number of managing agents more quickly, or from a managing agent, I can actually manage my queue of brokers that want to see me more effectively because I can do that online and virtually. I think we're just going to see that that's the way of working going forward. So I think there'll be some things that will drop back, but I think fundamentally there's a lot of good change that's been driven through this, that's been forced upon us. And I think for a lot of it, there's no going back. And we just need to accept that.
Okay, thanks, Des. So Nigel L., one of our audiences, said, are panelists finding that there is an upside to the pandemic, which is that consumers are now much more accepting to change, which I think is the point that you're making, Des. It's been forced upon us. And therefore, there's a real opportunity to introduce change at a faster rate and in a more profound way. Neve, not so much consumers, but you have lots of stakeholders that you work with, lots of internal customers. And again, in the NHS, which I'm sure has its fast moving parts, but I'm sure has its very stuck in its ways traditional parts as well. Have we proved to ourselves that we can move faster, do more, and how do we gain, how do we keep the momentum of that in a post-COVID world?
I think that's absolutely critical. I mean, spot on really from Nigel there, but it is both, patients, consumers, users, and clinicians. I spent 4 years looking after the health sector, health practice in Accenture, trying to persuade, virtual consultations were happening. We need to do this. We need to do this. And suddenly overnight, everyone moves to virtual consultations. And we had to brush away all the objections because there was no other choice. So, but it showed, I think, everyone that you can effect great change and do it very rapidly. And it's bumpy and it's never perfect, and there are people for whom it doesn't work, but it shows you that there is so much that's possible to do very rapidly. And perhaps we're guilty sometimes of holding ourselves back and saying, oh, well, maybe that's not going to work, maybe users won't like it, maybe people won't like it. And actually sometimes you've just got to press the go button. I mean, I'm having a slightly surreal conversation internally at the moment where we're piloting some features of Teams, and I'm like, just switch it all on, just switch it all on and let anything, and let's see what happens, right? And people will work out how to use it, and people will find their own ways. And then we can come back and give guidance. But there's nothing to pilot here. So it
Okay.
is.
So,
I think we can do a lot more faster.
all right, and I think we'd all resonate with that a little bit. There's an opportunity that has been shown to us up and down the organisation. I think a lot of the more senior people, not just technologists, Phil said earlier, technology's kind of used to working remotely, but I think there are other departments who maybe are a little bit more, we need to get to the office, who've learnt that.